Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Theology on the Rise. I am here in Nathan's bedroom with Nathan Carlson himself.
People didn't need to know that.
Yes, well, now they know. The bed is right over there.
This is our new studio, actually, is what it is.
This is where we're doing our episodes from, guys.
It's my office. This is my office.
It's an office space. It's not a bedroom. It's an office space. This half of the room is the office. Very formal. Guys, welcome to another episode. I am here. This is Caleb, your host. Nathan, your other host. No Seth Hansen. End of conversation. And joining us on the other side of the interweb space is Mr. Steve Kim. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Of course. We are very excited to have you. Steve, why don't you tell the lovely people watching back home who you are, what you do? Tell us about Apologetics Canada and what are you studying currently? It's very exciting stuff.
Yeah, probably the most important thing that your listeners and viewers should know about me is that I am a Christian. I was a rebel who committed high treason, whom God saw in his good pleasure to offer clemency to. Not only that, he turned around and he, if it's possible, he, one-upped himself and actually adopted this former rebel into his family. Amen. So if you call yourself a Christian out there, I am your brother, and we are destined as adopted sons and daughters of God Most High to inherit his kingdom, and that just boggles my mind. I can see why a king would offer clemency to a rebel who committed high treason, but then to actually adopt him into his family, that blows my mind. But that is probably the most important thing about me. The next important thing is that I'm a family man. I live in the Edmonton area here in the beautiful province of Alberta that is about to get covered in, 20 inches of snow. Who knows? The summer is never easy here. But my wife, Sharina, and I have been married for the last just over 15 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Her family is from Alberta. So I'm from BC, but I'm a transplant, moved here about 7 years ago. We have two kids. Nice. A 12-year-old daughter named Maya and a son who is about to turn 10 named Tavin. So that's probably the next most important thing. And then the least important thing is that I serve as the Alberta director for Apologetics Canada. We are a national apologetics ministry. We're located in BC, Alberta, Ontario, and in the Maritimes, and we're growing. Our mission is to equip the Christian community with a biblically sound, intellectually robust, and culturally engaged faith. And we do that through various means. Our weekly podcast, you can check it out on YouTube and other major streaming platforms. We do annual conferences, one of which we just did last weekend in Toronto.
Really? Wow.
We produce video resources like Can I Trust the Bible or The Human Project, the Thinking series, and so on. So we try to equip the Christian community by resourcing the church. Because we believe that the church is God's plan A and there is no plan B. And so we try to work with local churches as much as we can. So that's a little bit about me and about what I do with Apologetics Canada.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really don't know a ton about Apologetics Canada, but I guess what I do know is that a lot of it has been popularized recently by Wes Huff, because Wes Huff is a big part of... what is his role in Apologetics Canada?
So he's now the vice president of Apologetics Canada. So
he's the brass.
Yeah. So between him and Andy Steiger, they're sort of our two head honchos, and then and it's lovely to serve with those guys.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so what does a day-to-day for you look like? Like when you're going throughout your day, being the Alberta director of Apologetics Canada, what is that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question because, I mean, I would make a fantastic lawyer. It depends. So how I got to start with Apologetics Canada was, so I've been serving with Andy and his wife Nancy for about 12 years now. Um,
Okay.
and when we started, it was, just the three of us, maybe one other person, four of us, kind of a thing. So it was a very small organization.
Okay.
And which meant that each person had to be able to do just about everything. And so
Sure.
that's how I started, and it's carried on over the last decade or so. I just try to catch whatever um, might fall through the cracks. And although now the organization is really growing with new staff members joining and whatnot, and so my role is becoming less eclectic.
Sure.
So day to day, it could look anything from doing our weekly podcast and prepping for it to doing some website stuff here and there. I often respond to emails that come in from people that are asking about various things. I help coordinate the conference.
Okay.
I help oversee some of it, some aspect of it, and so yeah, it really depends on what it is. But now there is some talk happening in the background to move me into a more of a teaching and
Okay.
education side of things, like developing online education content. Nothing is set in stone yet, but
Sure.
at
Yeah.
least that is the vision. And I do love teaching and interacting with people, so that would be sort of my sweet
Yep.
spot. So we'll
Yeah.
see where that goes.
More podcasts, more online education stuff.
Sure.
Could be.
Yeah,
Could be.
that could be
Cool.
really fun.
And I guess that plays into our topic a little bit. You said you love teaching, and
Mhm.
you're working on your PhD right now.
Right.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
want to tell people a little bit
Sorry,
about what
Caleb.
that is? Sorry.
Sure. Sorry, Caleb. You asked me about that earlier, and I remember I kind of skipped over that part. So
That's
I am
okay.
yeah, I am currently doing my PhD studies at the University of the Highlands and Islands in Scotland.
Oh, nice. That's
Yeah.
great.
So I don't have to be there, but I do go there. I have to go there once a year just to present
That's
on
great.
my research that year, that
Scotland.
sort of
I love
thing.
that.
Oh yeah, it's this last trip in October was a real it was really fun. Andy tagged along and he showed me different places that he would go, and my family has been planning for a family trip if and when, by the grace of God, I actually graduate. We'll go travel in Scotland and then some other places. But yeah, I am doing a PhD study. It's a part-time 5-year deal, and I'm just in my third year now. And my topic is transhumanism. And we'll talk more about that, what transhumanism is, in a moment here. But
Yeah.
um, basically the ethics of human enhancement, technological human enhancement, and how far is too far. I'm wrestling with that question. And I do
Yeah.
that specifically by wrestling with two thinkers, Friedrich Nietzsche and G.K. Chesterton, whose portraits are up there behind me there, if you can see this. So I am basically looking at, okay, is there any proper limits to human enhancement? Or can we basically tinker with ourselves till, I don't know, till kingdom come?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm wrestling with. So the way I pitch it to people, to say an average person in the pew, which, by the way, it's a bit odd when I say that because I count myself an average person in the pew.
Sure.
How would I pitch it to somebody who's not very familiar with this topic? I would say this. I would say, what if your children, your grandchildren, when they came to you and said, "Hey, Papa, my friend so-and-so, she's way smarter, way faster. She is a wonderful piano player. She is way prettier than anybody else in school because her parents genetically modified her and got some, implants in her brain to connect with artificial intelligence and all of that. why didn't you do that for me?
Crazy.
What should be our response, especially from a
Yeah.
Christian worldview perspective? So that's how I kind of try to keep that scenario always in the back of my mind as I do my research.
That's a really interesting topic, because I think, like you said, kind of in the future, as this generation has kids and our
Mhm.
kids have kids, right? Like that, there is going to be more and more of that.
Sure.
You know, even just people being able to, like, already people can pay for more enhancements
Mhm.
than others can, right? Like you take, I don't know, like glasses, for example,
Mhm.
right? Like certain glasses are expensive, and yeah, for
Even
someone
something
with,
like medications, like where
yeah,
it's like it's not you can get by without your 20 milligrams of bifenton or whatever it is a day, but like you know you could be at a disadvantage if you're not reaping the benefits of
Mhm.
that come with the medication. So kind of that's a good, I'm glad you bring that up, because that's kind of what spurred on this whole conversation for me, and maybe want to reach out to someone who is in this and studying this and exploring these topics, that kind of existentialism,
mm,
where like which is perfectly communicated in, amongst other things, in the analogy you gave, like just the pure existentialism of that scenario.
right.
Like
Mhm.
What would that look
what
like?
is that little girl at this point? Like she's been,
Mhm.
she's been given, she's had enhancements that have fundamentally changed her genetic makeup,
Mhm.
Hmm.
and have changed her. So like what are what is she now?
Mhm.
And there's just that whole thing. So, and like the kind of the existentialism that comes, and how do we as Christians, how do we grapple with that? Because we're
Mhm.
entering that age.
Yeah.
It's like that's common. Like maybe not in that maybe we may not have that exact scenario, but technology is always progressing, and we've already seen with AI in the
Mhm.
past couple of years dramatic growth.
Yeah.
And like this
Yeah.
thing is alive. It feels like, it's obvious it's
Mhm.
not, but it can feel that way to the uninitiated, right? So just like, no, it's the landscape is changing, the scenario is changing, and what do we do with that? Do we run
Mhm.
instinctually from it? Do we fight it? Do we war against it? Like what should our response be? That's kind of the whole,
Yeah.
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
why I wanted you
and
to
I
reach out.
and I think as far as technology, our relationship as human beings to technology goes, kind of like you pointed out earlier, um, we have already been enhancing ourselves through technology, right? You pointed out our glasses. Yeah,
Yeah.
that whatever I have, over my eyes right now, this is a piece of technology. We're wearing clothes. We're doing this
Yeah.
with digital
Yeah.
technology. And I don't think technology in and of itself is evil. I mean, you could argue, presumably, Jesus himself, as a tradesperson, used tools, right?
Yeah.
As a
Yeah.
carpenter, or whatever tectone is in Greek.
Right. Yes.
We translated carpenter, but
Maybe Mason or yeah.
yeah. But whatever it is, he was a tradesperson,
Yeah.
and he presumably used tools, and certainly he had no issues with that. But at the same time, there are cases where humanity takes technology to make a name for themselves. And I think of the Tower of Babel, where
Mm,
they discovered or invented a way of making bricks. What
right.
do? They build a tower uh, to basically make a name for themselves like
Mm,
gods.
yeah.
And that's where God comes and actually disperses the people, um, confusing their language and so on. So you kind of see a picture of where technology can go awry. Our relationship to technology can be corrupted in that way. But at the same time, we use technology to alleviate suffering and heal what is broken and so on. So I think that's a very legitimate use of technology. So it's just more a matter of putting more thought into, okay, how are we using technology? And is transhumanism and where it takes us, is it good for us? Is it right? And so on. Now, these are questions that we would have to wrestle with. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge question to answer. So, what's your conclusion?
Well, I guess, I mean, before we even get to the conclusion, perhaps we should define what even we mean by transhumanism. So transhumanism is predicated on technological human enhancement, right? So it depends on how you define it, because if you define it as, hey, let's use technology to improve human condition, improve human lives, then there doesn't seem to be anything particularly objectionable about it. Like we mentioned just now, we've already been doing that, and there doesn't seem to be anything inherently wrong with technology.
Right.
But the question is now, with things like AI, with things like genetic engineering, these very advanced technologies, what we're talking about now is, can we tinker with ourselves? Right? Can we tinker with our bodies to such an extent that we cease to become human? We exit our humanity. Because that's what transhuman means. Trans means beyond, right? Beyond human. So the idea is that evolution hasn't finished. We're not the pinnacle of evolution. We're going to continue to evolve. But now we are at a place where we can take charge of this evolution. We don't have to leave it to natural selection on random variation anymore. We can intelligently design our evolution from here on so that we can become whatever we want to be through tinkering with ourselves with technology. So this one writer, Michael Hauskeller, who, by the way, has a very helpful book called, what's the name of the book? Better Humans, Understanding the Human Enhancement Project. It's a tiny little book, very helpful. He's not a Christian, but he brings up he has some very thoughtful critique of transhumanism. And the way he defined it, kind of tongue-in-cheek, is transhumanism is the belief that we should do everything we can do within our power to leave humanity behind and become something better than human. So when you define it that way, all of a sudden transhumanism doesn't sound as appealing for many people.
Because we're not going to be human anymore.
Right. Nothing wrong with using technology to alleviate suffering and so on, but using technology to just exit our humanity and become something better, whatever that better means. Now, all of a sudden, this is... And so the question is, it's not as though there's going to be a very clear point at which, okay, before we did this, we were human, but now that we've done this, we're not human anymore kind of thing. It seems to be more, we're going to accrue this kind of technology in ourselves, accumulate whatever pieces of technology in ourselves and just progress that way. And at some point we'll look back and go, okay, I don't think we're human anymore, sort of thing. So it's really hard to just kind of draw a line in the sand and go this far, no farther. But that is what I'm wrestling with. This is the sort of topic that I'm trying to, this philosophy that I'm trying to address.
There's a philosophy.
Yeah. So it is definitely a philosophy and a movement. There is something of a movement that is happening.
What in your, like, you probably rub shoulders with people who are also in this particular field of study. Have you run into a lot of the types that you were just describing who are, full, like they're unadulterated transhumanists? They're like, let's keep, like, let's not even worry about where's the line. Let's go past the line. Let's alleviate suffering. Let's improve our lives, beyond the point of, let's just keep going. Have you encountered a lot of people like that?
Yeah, I mean, in my writing, I haven't met them in person directly, But in my readings, I come across a fair bit of that. And there are writers like Max Moore, who, by the way, that's not his real name, but he changed his name to reflect his philosophy. So imagine that, Max Moore. Anyway, he's a very key figure in modern day transhumanism, and he has no problem saying we don't owe any allegiance to our human nature, whatever that human nature is, and we should be able to tinker with ourselves and go beyond it. Others like Nicholas Agar, this New Zealand, can I say Kiwi? This philosopher from New Zealand, he's a bit more moderate. He is for enhancement, technological human enhancement, but he doesn't think we should exit our humanity and it should be tempered by something else. But so they're anywhere in between, right? Some people are very skeptical about it, saying we shouldn't even toy with this. Others are kind of moderate, like Nicholas Agar. Others, like Max Moore, are very radical. Yes, we should. Another key figure is Nick Bostrom, the Swedish philosopher who I think he might still be teaching at Oxford, or at least he did. And he's another key figure. And he has an article called, Why I Can't Wait to Become Post-Human, those kinds of things. So there are people who are certainly pushing for that idea. This idea that, we should have this morphological freedom. That's a term that's used by...
Morphological freedom.
Yeah, Anders Sandberg, who is another philosopher. The idea is that we should be able to take whatever physical or cognitive form that we like. We should be able to tinker with ourselves. We should have that freedom, and that should be a constitutional freedom. That sort of thing. And that's what is being pushed. And so, and so if you if your philosophical antenna is up, it certainly has some connections to sort of this Gnostic kind of thinking of, okay, the body is just whatever. It's important, but it's not that important. We can do with it whatever we want.
Right.
What's inside it is more important.
It's like spirit disconnected from body kind of thing. Yeah.
Sort of, yeah.
Some kind of. Yeah, I guess this whole topic kind of makes me think of like people that you see on YouTube. Like, have you heard of Brian Johnson and the Blueprint Project at all?
I've heard the Blueprint Project. I'm not familiar with it though. Tell me more about that.
I'm also not like super familiar with it, but I've seen a few of his videos, and Brian Johnson, I believe that's his name, he's this guy who is like doing his very best to live forever, basically. So
it's this guy.
He wants to find the ways that the human body can just be maxed out, perfect kind of thing. Give himself everything that scientifically the human body should need, and then hopefully live forever. Do like, he's very strict in his workout routine and like all this stuff.
Skincare regimens.
Yeah, just like trying to be perfect, right?
And he claims that he's been able to reverse the process of aging. Like he's actually de-aged. He claims. I don't know what he bases that claim upon, but yeah.
Yeah, this topic makes me think of that a little bit, and just like, from a constitutional standpoint, you've been talking about how like, people should have the right to do whatever they want, but Brian Johnson is almost from like he's coming from a different perspective, where he's just like, I will live forever, and it's not, he's not necessarily changing anything in his body. He's just doing his very best to like be the best forever. And it's just
that's very interesting. That actually demonstrates really well what transhumanism is like, in the sense that transhumanism is a broad movement. So it has all kinds of iterations within it, one of which is overcoming aging. So living forever, indefinite lifespan. So there are subcategories like that, where some people are more interested in improving our cognitive capacities, our memory, our what would you call it? the rate at which we process information and so on. Others are more into cybernetics, us fusing with computers, right? And then with AI and so on. And Neuralink right now by Elon Musk, right? Is an example of that, where it actually promises, the blind will see and the lame will walk and so on. And then there are others who are more about overcoming our what was it called? Well, overcoming death not by giving ourselves indefinite lifespan, but by uploading our mind to the cloud, so
a database somewhere.
Digitize our mind and upload it so we can live forever that way in our digital existence. Whether that's possible, of course, is a huge philosophical question. But those are the aspirations. And in one way or another, the technologies that point us in that direction, we have that now. Whether it's through something like brain-computer interface by Neuralink, or whether it's CRISPR-Cas9, which is a very precise gene editing tool that's been developed, and so on, right? So now you can start talking about, well, can we even pharmaceutically tinker with ourselves so that we change the chemical composition with ourselves so that we're always happy, or always we overcome anxiety and depression forever, and we feel more empathy so that we become more moral human beings, and so on.
So a lot of virtuous, altruistic motives there. Like it's
good.
We're doing
intentions.
We're doing a good thing. We're gonna reduce suffering. And we're going to become more moral creatures because of this, because there's going to be, whatever guards that prevent certain behaviors or whatever it is, in the, via cybernetic uplink in the brain or whatever it might be, right? So it's, there's a lot of altruistic motives there. I guess kind of it sounds like a silly question, but why is that a bad thing? Just purely hypothetical, like what I mean, like I feel a certain way about it. I feel that I don't want to lose my humanity, because I believe that God created me in such and such a way, and there's a design, and it's not my place to strip away parts of that design. It's and just the whole idea behind escaping suffering, reducing suffering. That's not what life on earth is about.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about a little bit. It's theology of suffering.
Yeah, the whole theology of suffering. Like it's not there's no you will not find in the Bible anything to support the idea of running from, escaping, taking a cheat code to avoid the problem of pain and death in life. Like that's not there. There is an escape. There is an escape via Christ, but it's not for us to sort of, facilitate that. So I guess, but just like hypothetically, why, what would you say to people who are in support of, people with, again, altruistic motives? Why shouldn't we take that extra, post-human,
I'm glad you brought that up, because as you can see, this actually connects really tightly with theology. It's ultimately a worldview question, right? What kind of a world are we living in? How are you making sense of all this? Because depending on how you frame this whole thing, depending on your worldview, your answer is going to be different. Like you mentioned, well, I've been created by God in his image. I have a certain calling, right? I have a purpose in this life, and I don't own myself, right? I belong to God, body, mind, and soul. So in that setting, how does transhumanism figure into this, or does it? Whereas if you believe that we are just products of matter plus time plus chance, like guys like Max Moore would think, then you would say, well, yeah, we don't owe whatever human nature is, we don't owe any allegiance to it, right? We are our own selves, and we should be able to do with our bodies whatever the heck we want. So it'll depend on your worldview. So whether it's a good thing or a bad thing will depend on that. Now, what you say about, since you brought in theology, and I know CLBI is, specifically Lutheran, one thing that really kind of stands out to me is, in a lot of ways, transhumanism is a self-salvation project. Right?
Yeah.
We want to save ourselves from the predicament that we're in through technique. And that stands in stark contrast to the sort of the Lutheran theology of law and the gospel, where God uses a law to expose the brokenness in us. And then it is through Christ that we receive his righteousness that's imputed to us as a sheer act of grace, nothing that we earned. It is just given to us. And then we live out our life. We become sanctified. And as we become sanctified, we live out our salvation in this grateful response to the grace that we have freely received. Transhumanism is not quite like that, where, again, depending on how you take it, it can be a real self-salvation project where you're trying to overcome aging, escape death, escape suffering, and so on. Now, having said that, I should also note that Christianity is not against human enhancement.
Right.
In fact, human enhancement is built into it. If a sinner, right, is convicted by the Holy Spirit that he has sinned against the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, has committed this high treason, right, and casts himself upon the mercy of our Creator and receives that salvation through Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit now indwells him, marking him or her as a child of God, right? Now, I think that's a real human enhancement.
Yeah.
Not to mention that the kind of picture that we get of the new heaven and the new earth is a place where, in some ways, you could at least, one plausible way of reading it is suffering has been eliminated, right? God will wipe away our tears. There's no more death, and so on.
It almost goes, like you've been talking about, it almost goes beyond enhancement, right? Because it's like, now we're in Christ. We're a new creation. Like the old has passed away. We're still ourselves, obviously, and like that plays into another doctrine, theology. We could talk about, like, being a sinner and being a saint simultaneously. But like Christ comes and we become a new creation. We become a whole new person, right? It's not just like enhancement. It's like, it goes beyond that.
It's a shift in identity.
Yeah.
Right? And
yeah, exactly.
We go from condemned rebels to beloved sons and daughters of God Most High.
Yeah.
We are still us in one sense. When the new heaven and the new earth come, I will still be Steve Kim.
Yeah.
And in some ways, if we look at what Jesus was like post-resurrection, or there were some very interesting things. On the one hand, Jesus seems to be able to just vanish and show up somewhere else, or walk through locked doors and so on. And yet Luke and John actually go out of their way to show us that Jesus post-resurrection was very physical being, because in Luke, Jesus shows up, peace be upon you. And one of the first things that he asks is, do you have any food? And he's sitting down eating and everybody's watching. In John 2, Jesus shows up at the Sea of Galilee, and when the disciples come to the shore, he's cooking breakfast, and they eat together, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so there is a very physical sort of existence, and that's the message of the resurrection, is that death has been defeated, right? Spiritual and physical death has been defeated, so that death no longer has the final say. And what our glorified bodies will look like, we can speculate, and we can get some hints of that through what Jesus was able to do post-resurrection. But having said all of that, this all comes in the Christian worldview by way of all of creation being made right with God. And that's one thing that I love about Christianity, is that it's not just about salvation of souls. It is the renewal of all creation, right?
Yeah.
And we see a picture of that through the resurrection of Jesus, right? But Paul tells us in Romans that the whole creation is groaning, right, for the revelation of the glory of the sons of God to appear.
Yeah.
Whereas transhumanism isn't quite like that. It's very much human-centered. This is what I do with my body.
Yeah.
And of course, there are other things that are then brought in after the fact. Oh, it's about, environmental preservation. And in fact, one of the enhancement projects is moral enhancement projects, where we try to make ourselves more empathetic and so on. And one of the goals of that is so that we would take care of the environment that we live in. But that's almost more for the sake of
Us.
human convenience, it seems to me, because that's where we live. If we are not there, what do we care, really?
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
the Christian worldview seems to be a lot more concerned about all of creation, not just planet Earth where we live, right? And not just human souls, but all of creation is to be redeemed, and it will be redeemed that way.
Yeah.
And so the scope is very different that way.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think that people think about this topic more than they realize. Like we see it all the time in movie tropes, right? Like me and my fiance are watching the Fast and Furious saga, and in one of the movies, Hobbs and Shaw, they're fighting this guy who has been enhanced, and the whole movie is about this like agency that's enhanced this guy, and how he's like a superhuman, and he's like, I want the whole world to be different, to have all these technological enhancements, and they're fighting that, right? And yeah, for some reason we see that, humans see that, and we go, that's wrong, and like, why is that? Like, what, when you
The question was, why is it that when we see, like in Fast and Furious, the characters are fighting this enhanced being, and we have this, like we think that's wrong, right? Like what's wrong with that kind of thing? Yeah, okay. So and you said it was a knee-jerk reaction. So let's maybe pick up from there. It's a knee-jerk reaction, and what do you mean?
Well, it seems to be the case, like in the example of that movie where you have a character who's been artificially enhanced, and you're like, wow, that's not good. I think too of like there's so many examples of it, but like the villain in Rocky IV, the Russian Ivan Drago, they're shooting him up with steroids, and he's hooked up to these machines, and he's being enhanced, right? And that's the bad guy, So there is something too that, like, there's something intrinsically, we look at that and we go, that's bad. That's bad. That's what bad people do, So it's I think in part it is, and like the whole science fiction genre as a whole really gets into this, like
Gattaca, for example.
Gattaca. I think of Asimov, the author, Isaac Asimov. Like he writes about that all the time, right? It's just like, it's just like inherently, like you read his stories, and he writes a lot of stories about this topic, and in many of them, the technology is presented as a good thing. It's often presented as a bad thing, but there are times when it's presented as a good thing. But you read that, and it sort of brings up a deep existentialism, where it's like, this, keep that away, keep that away. It's like nightmare apocalypse scenario. The idea of our brains being hooked up to computers, and we lose. And it is existentialism. I think, like, it's that deep paranoia about losing what we are and who we are, and that's kind of.
But yeah, can you speak to that?
Yeah. In pop culture, there's definitely that sort of I don't want to call it fear-mongering, but there is an expression of that deep-seated fear about technology. So, for example, the very first movie that I got to ever watch with my dad in a movie theater was Terminator 2.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
And the Terminator series, right? Skynet, robots, artificial intelligence going rogue. And then later, as I got a little older, I watched The Matrix.
Yep.
Where human beings are basically being locked into this illusory virtual reality, and when in fact they're being harvested for energy to fuel the machines, those kinds of things. And most recently, we've seen things like Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix, where he actually falls in love with his operating system.
Yeah.
Right. And back then we looked at it and go, oh, how stupid does he have to be to fall in love with software, kind of a thing. And yet we're doing this right now with ChatGPT. So much so that OpenAI had to update ChatGPT so that, the ChatGPT can kind of push back on any attempts to build real friendships. Right. And we're so vulnerable to that because we are. And so I think what's going on there is that when we see things like movies like Rocky, or we see movies like Fast and Furious, where we're fighting against people that are enhanced, a number of things are going on there. One is that the sense of otherness that we feel towards beings that have been enhanced like that. Right? Is he truly human, or is this something more? And secondly, what was he or she enhanced for? To what end? Right? Was this person enhanced to be a weapon for some nefarious organization, or what's going on? And the third thing that's a really big there's a big discussion going on in the literature is what happens to things like achievement and virtue when everything is just engineered. So, for example, if I play the violin, I can't do that very well. I'm a bass player, not a violin player. But let's say, like I practice really hard and I become a virtuoso, right? I put in, hours day in and day out. I train my ears, I train, my sight reading skills, and I train my fingers and all those things, and I become a virtuoso. You would say that's an achievement. There's something noble and good about it. You exercised virtue, and when you build virtue by doing the thing that you are training yourself for. Whereas if I just implanted a chip so that I can play really quickly, now I might have condensed the time that it might take for me to become a virtuoso, but then you would look at that and go, did you learn to play the violin that well, or was it an engineering feat? What happens to our idea of achievement? So when we see beings like that in movies like Fast and Furious, we wonder, okay, like, what is this thing? Like, what is this? Somebody just who's really powerful that worked out really hard? And so we tend to have a lower view of that enhanced person like that. So I think there are multiple things going on there.
Yeah. And how would you say, we've talked about this a little bit already, but can you expand on it a little bit more? How would you say that intersects with like our Christian worldview and faith, and like how this because I guess my first thought would be that, well, the law is written on my heart, and that in some ways is what causes me to like go and I look at something like that and I'm like, that's weird, like that doesn't seem to fit in what's been written on my heart. But I don't know, can you speak to that a little bit more, and even other aspects of transhumanism and how that intersects with faith?
Sure. I think ultimately what's going on with the transhumanist philosophy is that we're trying to build for ourselves another garden.
What's that?
It's an attempt to build a garden for ourselves, and it's going to be a garden where we call the shots.
Right.
We do this. This is according to our wants and desires. But if you read Genesis 1-3, you see that that's exactly the problem, is that Adam and Eve, when they disobeyed God and took from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, what they were saying, in a sense, the serpent told the truth, right? When you take the fruit from this tree, your eyes will become opened. You'll become like a god, knowing good and evil. Now, I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but I heard from those who study Hebrew that there's this idea of knowing good and evil, which has that element of defining what's good and evil. So you'll be able to call the shots of what's good, what's evil.
Right.
You will be the masters of your own destiny, is basically what they're being told, if this interpretation is correct, right? And then you go on later in the book of Judges, that phrase comes up over and over again. And in those days, there was no king in Israel, and every man did what was right in his own eyes.
Yeah.
And when you read Judges, you see that it's not a good society to be in. And so when we're reading the book of Ruth, and you see this foreign woman from Moab coming into this area, and now she is going out to glean grain from a field, it's a very dangerous situation that Ruth is in. Anyway, so this is the problem, is that we are trying to become the masters of our own destiny, and that project is still being carried on, depending on how you frame transhumanism. It could be an attempt to build our own garden where we eliminate suffering, we call the shots on what's good, what's evil, and in fact, if we take this idea of, let me just put it this way, a lot of transhumanists still hang on to a lot of the Enlightenment values like liberty, equality, all those kinds of things, which I would argue really ultimately sit on the borrowed capital from Christian theology.
Sure. Yeah.
But the idea behind that is, well, in secular sort of liberalism, we can't really agree on what is the good life. Right. So we let each person, each community, each state and country figure out for themselves what that is. So we let them do their thing. And a lot of that is actually that pulse is found in a lot of the transhumanist literature, like morphological freedom, for example. You should be able to take whatever form you want according to your vision of what the good life is. And so when I think back to this idea of transhumanism is an attempt to create this garden for ourselves, I can't help but see, okay, how long is this garden going to last? Is this going to be like that ancient Israelite society where every man did what was right in his own eyes? And is that really a good thing for us? And here's the second problem. Transhumanism it's predicated on the view of what a human being is, right? What is a human being?
Yeah.
So the problem is this. Let's say we can engineer ourselves so that we can live forever, however long we want, and we can go out on our own terms. And we've lived 5,000 years, and we're like, okay, I'm done with life. And then, I mean, it's. I'm not making this up. I read this sort of thing in transhumanist literature,
right?
And we just kind of do in this garden whatever we want, right? But let's say we overcome our frailties. Right? My question is this going to lead to a good society? Right? Because what is here's the central question that I want to have our listeners really wrestle with is, what is the nature of our brokenness? What is broken in us? Is it a physical brokenness? Is it a spiritual brokenness? All of the above? And if it's a spiritual brokenness of some sort, will the engineering of our bodies and our brains address that? Can we make ourselves more moral by engineering ourselves? Yeah. And if we can't, and yet we make ourselves live forever, what's going to happen? Now, I always think back to the story of Genesis 1-3, and at the end of Genesis 3, you see Adam and Eve getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden. And I grew up always thinking, okay, that's a punishment for, right? God is angry, righteously angry, and he's punishing Adam and Eve.
Right.
It's not wrong, but there's more to it than that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine the angels watching all of this that just happened? Adam and Eve took the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Their nature has been corrupted at this point, right? They would be thinking, God, you have to kill them, and you have to kill them now before they really start multiplying. Because that brokenness is going to multiply.
Yeah,
what does God do? Right. And what does God do? I mean, he could have just killed them right there and then. He doesn't do that because he loves them. What does he do? Out of mercy, he makes them leave the garden. Okay, you need to get out of here. Why? Because scripture says very specifically, lest they reach out to the tree of life, eat from it, and live forever. In other words, if they do that in this current state, they're going to be stuck with their broken nature forever. They're going to live in their brokenness forever. So they need to leave so that they can't do that. So it was an act of mercy on God's part. So I think then when I come back to transhumanism, I think to myself, my goodness, what's going to happen if we can't fix our spiritual brokenness by engineering our bodies, and yet we live forever? What's going to happen? And I know people will often talk about, oh, we're going to improve our empathy for one another and so on and so forth. All of that also depends on our vision of what is the good life. And we can't even, I mean, if anybody who studied ethics and philosophy for any amount of time understands that there's no agreement on what the good is. And yet we are going to just let people do what they want to do
forever.
Anyways, forever. And what kind of a situation are we going to lock ourselves into? Right. And so that is not, this isn't me just trying to fearmonger, but I'm trying to paint a big picture of where could transhumanism take us?
Right.
What is the Christian worldview alternative? And so that we can actually take from the transhumanist drive, if you will, whatever is good and noble, and because there is a lot of that, without actually going over the boundaries of who we are as human beings created in the image of God.
Yeah. Just the, I mean, I will admit I never looked at Genesis 1-3, specifically the banishing from the garden. I never looked at it in that sense, but that really puts a different spin on it. And I think you're right. I can imagine a world where we achieve immortality through artificial means, through augmentation, enhancement, whatever it is. We eliminate death. It's gone. Boom. Through technology. It doesn't exist anymore. Now we live forever. And just the horror when we get there and we realize that wasn't the problem to begin at all. Like that, the whole time, that wasn't the problem. It wasn't immortality. It wasn't the fact that, because the spiritual brokenness,
right?
You know, it did no amount of technological enhancement will heal the spiritual brokenness that was pronounced upon us in the garden and exists in each human being. There's only one solution to that. So I can totally imagine it like this could be a book or a movie or something, a dystopian future where we have achieved that thing that we have sought. The fear of death has caused us finally to create a technological antidote. And then just the horror of getting there and realizing that wasn't the problem, and then this the misery and the brokenness that we feel and we experience. Now there's no escape from it, and we're just stuck with it for all time. So that's, but I had in my mind some way I was gonna tie that into the good news, but
that's where, like, we realize that isn't the problem.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah,
and the only answer to the problem is Christ.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is what, because God's he's gonna repair our brokenness and then grant us, and then we have eternal life in that state where we've been brought to newness of life, and we have a wholeness. We're whole again. That's what God offers us through His Son.
Not just enhanced. Yeah.
Fellowship, reunion with the Father, that thing that was severed in the garden, and Christ acts as the path for us to get back to that fellowship with the Father. So He gives us that we're healed, we're renewed, made whole again. And then, of course, eternity, everlasting life would be a beautiful thing because we exist in that place of wholeness.
Yeah, and that wholeness has to do with finding our home.
Right.
So I mentioned creating a garden. Really, that is what we're trying to do, is we're trying to create a home for ourselves in this world.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what we see in the Christian worldview is, as God is seeking to redeem all of creation, restore all of creation, not just human beings. What He is doing is He is bringing us home, because the story of humanity in the Bible is a story of one big exile. Ever since we were released or let go or kicked out, expelled from the Garden of Eden, and we went east of the garden, from that point on until the end of the Bible, where we hear that proclamation, right? And everything is done. Everything is complete, right? God is with His people. They will be His people, and He will be their God.
Yeah.
Right. That union with God.
Yeah.
In this new heaven and new earth, with New Jerusalem having come down, right? This heaven and earth meet, and now that where we live is the place where God dwells, and we dwell with Him.
Yeah.
Right. So that is the homecoming that we're looking forward to as Christians, Christians or not. Really, that's where we should be headed for those of us who, by the grace of God, have the Holy Spirit indwelling us. That is our destiny, and that's what we're looking forward to. And it's ultimately a story of homecoming and how God is bringing humanity that has gone into exile back to Himself. And so so when we are trying to create a world where we call the shots, we will never be home, because that's not where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be with God.
Yeah.
That is our homecoming. That is our ultimate alienation. And that is our ultimate cosmodicy, really. Is this a place where we belong? Well, we belong to God, and until we belong to God, we will never be at rest, no matter what kind of garden we create for ourselves. And so that's where where my mind goes as I try to think of transhumanism from a broader Christian worldview perspective.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess with that, like, what is your kind of conclusion when it comes to these things? Like, have you come to that conclusion, or are you on your way there? Or, what do you?
My study is specifically framing the whole question around contentment, the virtue of accepting something, the enoughness of something, even if we could have more, right? And that's where I'm bringing in G.K. Chesterton, because he wrote some very interesting things around the issue of contentment, especially given the context of his day. But ultimately, where we find that contentment is, again, in the homecoming. The only problem is that we can't bring ourselves home.
Right.
We can't reconcile ourselves to God.
Yeah.
Because, I attend an Anglican church, so I would be remiss not to mention C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis wrote basically to the effect that once you sin, now you're in a hole that you can't get yourself out of, right?
Yeah.
Because for you to be forgiven perfectly, you have to repent perfectly. But the only person who can repent perfectly is somebody who's perfect, and you're not perfect because you have sinned. So you're trapped in this sort of, between the rock and a hard place kind of a thing, right? Spiritually. we can't reconcile ourselves to God. We can't come home because we're supposed to belong to God and we've been alienated from him and we can't, again, reconcile with him. So what we need is, like C.S. Lewis said, that perfect person who will come and intercede on our behalf. That's where the cross comes in. That's where Jesus Christ comes in, right? He is the one who can do that for us. He is the gate through which we can come home to this perfect union and communion with God Almighty, who created us out of his overflowing love and grace, where we will ultimately find ourselves at peace, knowing that all is well because we're with him who created us and who loves us. And so there's this right relationship, right loving relationship with God and with one another. Because Jesus said when he was asked, Rabbi, what is the greatest commandment? Which, by the way, it would be the sort of in our day, it would be equivalent to what is the meaning of life, Jesus? And he said in Mark 12, 29 to 31, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second commandment is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. So as far as he is concerned, the meaning of life is right relationship with God and with one another. We can only have that through Jesus Christ when we come through that door of Jesus Christ so that we can finally come home.
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's like there's a favorite saying of our friend Seth, former podcast associate. The man is restless, or the soul is restless until it finds its rest in God. And that's just what I thought of as you were talking about that.
So I guess
Augustine. Yeah.
Augustine,
He is so, it is so true.
Yeah.
So I guess your answer to that question of like, where's the line is it's not about the line, right? Like
it's not about the line. That's exactly right.
Yeah. There's another problem here that we need to address. Yeah. And that is the spiritual coming home issue.
Yeah.
That and tying into that, the whole contentment piece, like you're not concerned about the line when you're content. You're not saying, can I get up to the line and then stop there because you're content? You don't, it's enough, and that's the beauty of contentment to kind of, we're not a content people, but if you can master the art of contentment and say, that's enough.
Yeah. And I mean, we won't get into this too deeply here, but contentment, when we're at peace, it's not that we become passive. And that's one big point that G.K. Chesterton tries to drive home. He says it's an active virtue. It is the act of enjoying and appreciating all that is in our current situation. That kind of exhaustive appreciation of what we do have, not just fixated on what is to come as radical progressives do, or always fixated on some past golden age that you think existed, like a lot of traditionalists might do. But here and the now, what is it that we have? And can we exhaustively appreciate it? Because when you do that, it also it can give you that power and drive to then improve the current situation. Because he was also a realist. He realizes original sin has wreaked havoc and there is room for improvement in this world. We can't just sit idly by. Right. And especially Christians, we believe that, yes, Jesus commanded us to go and make disciples of all nations. Everyone must hear this good news that everyone can come home through Jesus Christ. And so, but we can do that from a place of contentment, knowing that this is what we have. We have something wonderful and this wonderful treasure in the gospel, and we can take that out into the world to anyone who will hear it.
No, that is a great, what an incredible truth, right?
Absolutely.
That we're able to do that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we're kind of coming to a close, but is there any like final comments or final thoughts that you would just want the audience to know about when it comes to transhumanism? And then also, tell people again about Apologetics Canada and what's coming up.
Yeah. The conference that we just recently had this year, our theme was on the theology of technology. So if you want to nerd out some more on these topics, not specifically about transhumanism, we dealt with AI a lot though this year.
Oh yeah.
So if you want to get a little bit more into that, we have the recordings available for a very moderate fee just to cover our cost. So you can go to our website to purchase that. There's lots of good content there. If our listeners and viewers want to learn more about Apologetics Canada and what it is that we do, the best place to go to would be apologeticscanada.com. Not .ca, apologeticscanada.com.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's make sure you go there. Although if you type apologeticscanada.ca, I think
It'll probably come
takes you back to our website anyway. But apologeticscanada.com, you can find our channel on YouTube. You can find our weekly podcast on Spotify and other major streaming platforms. Just sign up for our e-news sign up sheet there, and you can kind of keep updated on what we're up to and what new resources are coming up. And we're still working on additional episodes for the Can I Trust the Bible series, which has been wildly popular. And so keep your eyes peeled for that too. And follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all those good things.
Awesome. Yeah, check those things out.
Totally.
Apologetics Canada is very cool. Check out Steve's. Do you have Instagram, Steve? Or
I do have Instagram. I am not very active on it, other than to check my messages. But if you go on Apologetics Canada's Instagram page, you will find me as well as other members of the team, like Troy, Wes, Andy, Ben, and many others. And so make sure you check us out there.
Yeah,
totally.
No, that's awesome.
One more quick question for you, Steve. Are you a science fiction guy?
Oh, am I a science fiction guy? It depends. I do like science fiction precisely because it raises a lot of. So I'm a little nerdy when I approach science fiction, because science fiction raises a lot of these really important philosophical questions. So that's what I like to watch and think about. But yeah, I do like science fiction. I grew up watching Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Totally.
I thoroughly enjoyed Battlestar Galactica and so on. So yeah, I do.
Do you have a favorite science fiction story?
I like Star Wars, the original episodes. 4, 5, and 6, the original ones. I do like the theme of redemption that is there.
Yeah.
And I do like the sort of the element of Luke, for example, discovering who he really is.
Interesting.
That sort of thing, and that tension between good and evil, those kinds of things. I'm so much in love with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do like that
journey. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. So I did a short run series during the summertime, part of this podcast, but a separate show, Theology on the Screen, where I'm a big movie guy. I like movies. That's kind of like my bread and butter. So we basically, each episode we selected a movie and then talked about like the theological elements contained within the movie. And I think Star Wars was our second episode.
It.
This guy was there.
I was the guest for Star Wars.
Yeah. No, I connect a lot of this stuff as well to like film and the science fiction movies and books and things like that. So I had a sneaking suspicion you might be a fan as well. So I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Aside from that, though, I think that's it for us.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Steve. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was very, very enjoyable, and thanks for giving me a hearing.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. This was great.
Yeah, this is great. We'll have to have you on again to talk about Star Wars. That'd be
yeah. Let's do
Part
it.
And also, you live in Edmonton, and we're in Edmonton currently, so it's right. Is that true? Yeah.
I live in Spruce Grove.
Oh, Spruce Grove. Okay.
So just outside, but I mean, anybody who lives in the surrounding communities, traveling to Edmonton is not a big deal. And and our church, like I said, our new church building will be on the slightly east side of Edmonton. So I'll be traveling through regularly.
Cool. Yeah, we'll have maybe at some point we'll do something in person one day.
I'd love that. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Anyway, thanks for coming on, and for all of our viewers, we'll see you later. Catch us in the next episode.
Take care, guys.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode of Theology on the Rise. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel. It's a great way to support us. Leave a comment down below. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the CALC, the Canadian Association of Lutheran Churches, for sponsoring this episode. If you'd like to know more about the CALC, you can go to their website, calc.ca, to find out more about the Association of Lutheran Churches in Canada and to find a church close to you. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one.